Okay. Well, thank you, Professor Sidiris, Lam, and dear ladies and gentlemen. I should talk about the amulet in difficult anatomies. And first of all, I'd like to show you the amulet device again. It's constructed with a lobe with some stabilizing wires and some hooks for fixation in the left atrial appendage, and a disc, and there's a little waist in between that connects the lobe and the disc. Now, usually it has a depth of 10 to 12 millimeter, dependent on the size of the left atrial appendage and on the size of the device. And the lobe is usually positioned 10 millimeter behind the orifice of the left atrial appendage. But sometimes it's very difficult because dependent on the anatomy, it might be different than this scheme. If you look here, it's a cranial orientation of the left atrial appendage. In the 90-degree view, it's oriented to the right side, so it's cranially oriented. And there's a neck and a large, huge cauliflower left atrial appendage. So if you look here on the right-hand side, you should use a lobe which is very large to sit in here in this region, and then you can cover with a large disc this entrance of the left atrial appendage. I think technically it's easy to do, and you can put in the device like that, and you should have a look for overlapping structures, for example the left upper pulmonary vein, because if you have to use a large lobe, it's also a large disc, and sometimes it may interfere with the left upper pulmonary vein or with the mitral valve. Now the next case is a complex anatomy, as you can see here. We did some measurements, and the length was quite okay with 22 millimeters. But if you look here, we have measurements around 19 millimeters, 16 millimeters for the landing zone. And here in another projection at 48 degrees, it's also the second measurement was around 1.44 centimeters. And here you can have an imagination of the anatomical structure in the movie. Well, first of all, we tried at 22 because, go back one slide, because the measurements were around 14 and the largest diameter in the landing zone was 19. So I decided to go for a 22 millimeter device. But as you can see here, it's a very ovally shaped left atrial appendage. And we didn't get any contact to the inferior wall here in this 135-degree view. So I took it out and said, okay, that's the wrong decision. We did another measurement, and even in the 133-degree view, we measured, where's the measurement? 24 millimeter. So I thought, okay, it's overly a structure, and 24 millimeter, you should have a compression of 4 millimeters with the Amulet device at least. So I decided to go for a 28 millimeter device. And sometimes it's difficult to know in the 135-degree view where's the real orifice of the left atrial appendage, because it's not really defined anatomically. So we tried a 28 millimeter device, but it could not be implanted without force. And therefore we went for a 25 millimeter device. It always jumped out when I tried to put it in. Okay, this is wrong, but it doesn't matter. Now this is the first result with a 25 millimeter device. What do you think about it?
It looks good, but usually this view is good. How about 135?
That's right, this view is good. Okay, I go to the next movies here in a 95-degree view. Yes, here is a critical zone because there's no distance between the disc and the lobe, and the disc is not concave, so it might be not quite stable. That was our fear. And here you have the 135-degree view. There's some gap between the disc and the wall, but it was, well, quite okay. Then we did a tuck test, and if you see here, in the 90-degree view there is a gap and the lobe is coming out. It's not 2/3 behind the left circumflex. So all these things made us suspicious of a not stable position. So the question was, would you leave it like that or should we take another device? So we decided to measure again. This is the last picture with the tugging test, and you can see there it was coming out, and at one time we removed it from the left atrial appendage. So we decided for a larger, let's go back. Here I can show you with a tug test there was a real gap in the 135-degree view, so we decided to take it out. And the next one was, again, measurement of the left atrial appendage in different projections here in the 137-degree view. And it was always 1.5 millimeter, and only the length was 2.77 centimeters. But all the other measurements in the landing zone were around 15 millimeters. But anyway, if you look in the 94-degree view, well, you have the orifice of 26 millimeters and then the landing zone around here or in between here. You never know where it lands up. So it should be between 15 and 24 millimeter. So we decided to try again or to do a 3D echo. And this pointed out in the landing zone, and I think it's a more accurate measurement in the 3D echo, so you can decide where's the landing zone in all projections, and then you can have some measurements, especially in this plane. You can see here the ovally structure, and you can do the measurements here in the length and in the width. And it was between 21 and 23 millimeter. So we decided again to try to put in a 28 millimeter device. And this was the result after taking the 28 millimeter device. You can see here it's also sitting quite nice in these projections. And if you look here, you can see that with much more force, we turned the distal lobe into the left atrial body. And then it was fixed inside. And you can see here the distance between the lobe here in the upper part to the pulmonary vein and the disc. So this is really fixed in the left atrial appendage. In the lower part it's also critical because there's no distance between the disc and the lobe, but it was really stable. And therefore we left it like that. But it was very, very difficult. At 40-day follow-up it looked also quite fine with little gap here up in the upper pulmonary vein region, but it was very small, so we could accept it. And this was the view in 90 degree at follow-up. So it was quite okay. Now, which other complex anatomies do we see? The chicken wing is also very critical. If you have a short neck, you have to use a special technique. In this case, the working depth might be enough to put in the device in a usual manner, but in some other cases, if you have a very short neck, you can use the so-called sandwich technique. You put in the lobe of the device in the wing of the chicken wing, and then you can put the disc at the orifice, and it is fixed behind this limbus in this chicken wing form. That's the so-called sandwich technique. And these are the most important difficult anatomies, I think. So in summary, in ovally shaped LAs, sometimes oversizing is very important to get stable position, but it's sometimes also difficult to really get the device in. And usually you have to do a counterclockwise turn of the catheter to press the lower part, the mitral valve part, into the left atrial appendage. Sometimes you have a torque, yes, I already explained. And in chicken wing, the sandwich technique might be used. And in cauliflower, larger devices are necessary to get stable position behind the neck of the left atrial appendage. And you should be aware of other structures if you have a large disc outside. Thank you.
Thank you.